County. The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. This is a special COVID-19 edition of Politically Speaking. My guest is Alar Soever, who is the mayor of Town of Blue Mountains. Alar, welcome to Politically Speaking. It's been a while since we've seen you. You've had some illness and a few other things?
Well, yes, it's been a while, and thank you, David, for having me. Certainly, 2020 did not start off well for me personally, or the country at large with the COVID epidemic. So, I had a few health issues, had a quadruple bypass, but now I'm back in the saddle, and I'm happy to say that we're dealing with the COVID crisis quite well. As you can see, I'm here in my office.
Well, I would say very much you are in the pink.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a good thing. Town of Blue Mountains has been a bit of I would say, a bit different than the rest of Grey County, because the municipality has such both an agricultural side, but also a resort side that is very central to the east side of the municipality, as well as a larger center in Thornbury. And I wondered, how is the municipality dealing with COVID-19 itself?
Well, I'm happy to say that we're dealing with it very well. I'm very proud of our staff. I, of course, was away for the beginning of it, but staff and council did an excellent job. Very rapidly, we transitioned with most of our people working remotely. And at the town hall, we're fortunate we have a very I think I would say maybe even overbuilt town hall, which has been very useful at this point in time. We have a skeleton and staff here of about 30 people, and work has continued as normal. We've just yesterday approved our audit of our financial statements. We've done our financial information report filings with the province. Only one of two municipalities in Simcoe, Grey, and Bruce that has filed theirs to date. So I'm very proud of our staff in keeping things going and working safely. Every morning when I check into the town hall, I actually have an app, and there's a little code on the door, and you sign in by answering a few questions. So, are you feeling well and everything? So it's, it's been different. It's a new normal, but, it's business pretty much as usual. For instance, I know the building departments processed applications for 40 new dwellings during this time, and all doing it remotely.
Now, many municipalities have laid off staff as they've moved through the COVID-19 pandemic. Has that happened in Town of Blue Mountains?
No, because as a tourist destination, we reassign staff to certain priorities, but we're finding to keep our community safe, we can't go home and do that. We have to be active. We've shut down parks for the first 2 weeks of fishing season. We shut down all of the riverfront, that's public land, because we didn't want a huge influx of people for that beginning of fishing season. Like, we welcome visitors, but we've got to be prepared and be able to receive them safely. And we're not there quite yet. So we are reopening our parks, but the opening and closing of these facilities requires people to go out, and we put safety tape, police tape around our swing sets and playground equipment and benches and things like that, which, gives people visual cues that they should not be using them. So we found there's actually more work. And so rather than laying people off, we're redeploying our staff, and they've all been very gainfully employed.
Has the municipality found itself in a financial challenge? I know some of the municipalities have said, hey, this is going to cost us a fair chunk of change, and we're not sure we've got those in reserves. And with all of the other things that are going on, has that had an impact on Town of Blue Mountains?
We expect it will have some impact. I know our treasurer is bringing a revised budget here in June. What I've seen so far is the impacts here are not going to be huge because we don't run the transit system. The transit systems are a big cost for municipalities, and if they're not getting any revenue, that's the impact on the larger centers. We're certainly going to be losing some rental income for our arena and the community centers and the public library and things like that. There's going to be some rental income lost. Our harbor is now open again. So we're looking at an impact, but I think it would probably be less than $500,000, which is a significant amount of money, but it's not crippling.
Have you also done things like bag tags, stopping, sort of putting off the use of bag tags or extending payment deadlines for taxes and water bills?
Yes, certainly. Very early on, we extended all the payments till the end of June, and likely now that we know what the county and the province are doing, we will probably go lockstep with them and extend those payment deadlines for taxes to the end of September. And similarly with the water utility bills. We're doing, like, when you look at that, most people, it's like getting a zero interest credit card, right? It's offered to a lot of people, but we found when we did extend the deadline for the March, even, we were early on, so we actually did that for the March as well, that it only about 10% of the people actually took advantage of it. So I think most people, if they don't see imminent financial hardship, would rather pay their bills and go to sleep at night knowing they're paid. Because if you put the money in the bank these days, you're not getting a lot of interest. So
very true.
If you have the money, you might as well pay, because you're not, I think I calculated for the average person, they'd be able to buy a cup of Tim Hortons coffee, not Starbucks, with their savings. So it's not a lot of money if you have the money. Obviously, if you're in a situation where you're facing imminent financial hardship, it's worth your while to defer them. And, hardship cases, we've always looked at on a case-by-case basis.
Sure. It sounds like things are well in hand in Town of Blue Mountains then.
Yes, I would say I'm very pleased with the way staff has responded and council and everything. So, and also our community. Very early on, when the crisis first hit, we had the Rotary volunteering to clean carts at the Foodland, so they were sanitizing the carts. The Foodland has now taken that over. It was a staffing issue initially, and they also help with food delivery, both at the Foodland and Goldsmiths. So they stepped up there. The community has also stepped up with meal programs. We have three meal programs operating in the town for people who need them. We have the village meals for needy families, and that's to replace a lot of these families. The children were having meals as part of the school meal program. And so now we're providing meals to them. That's done through Chef Jean Knight and the Anglican Church. And Rotary's helping with that as well. And then they have the seniors meal program. And then BBO has food cards too, where they give gift cards to the Foodland to those in need. So the community's really stepped up. And, I think, that's the very positive thing about it, is that the community spirit has really surfaced and everybody's really pulling together.
Have you had any issues with beaches and waterfront like some of the other municipalities in Grey Bruce?
Well, we were prepared. We had our director of parks had delegated authority to shut down anything he wants to shut down. So very early on, we shut down our beaches well before the order from the officer of health. We have a bylaw department, unlike some of the other municipalities, and we have an excellent relationship with our OPP. So once we close properties, the bylaw department and the OPP were able to lay charges. They've only laid 5 so far, and most times it's just education. If they see people congregating or trespassing on something that's closed. So most of our things are opening up again because we feel we have a pretty good handle on the use of them. If we see abuse happening, then we'll just close them again.
Sure, and I think that's pretty much the suggestion of the medical officer of health, and even the premier is saying the same thing, that if things don't work out, we'll just back it down a bit.
Yeah, and I think most people take a lot more kindly to education than orders. So we haven't really seen a lot of problems. I know our bylaw gets about 15 or 20 calls a week on COVID related things where they go check it out. Like people are being pretty good, and not that you want to rat on your neighbors, but certainly if somebody has 10 cars in the driveway, they're endangering the whole community. So I'm happy to have bylaw go there. And most times it's education and, disperse, because that's where I see the risk is these social gatherings.
Now, town of Blue Mountains is like most of Grey Bruce, in that we have a fairly large seasonal transient population. These are people who have second homes, or a cottage somewhere along, maybe up the Bruce or down the shore, or in your case on the ski slopes or up back in the hills. Did you experience an influx of seasonal residents a little early?
Yes, I live on the shore myself, and I know that on my street, I would say it looks like a normal summer week when there's a long weekend at the end. So there are a lot of people that just moved up here in March and haven't gone home. When you look at our population, it's about 50% seasonal residences based on the census data for occupied and unoccupied homes. So we have a lot more than many of the communities. But I don't really have a concern with them being up here as long as everybody acts responsibly. And so far, this has been the case in that we've had very few cases. I think we have 5 reported cases in the town of Blue Mountains. And I know there was a few early on that weren't reported because people just weren't confirmed with a test. So, when a seasonal resident comes up here, we expect them to act responsibly, minimize their interactions with other people, just like we would hope that our permanent residents don't do unnecessary travel and interact with people in other places. And so...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please continue.
Yeah, and so it's not important where your primary address is. It's how you behave when you're here. And I think, it's been a little counterproductive, some of the discourse around, stay the F away kind of thing. Because when you say that to people and you're hostile to people, you make them feel like they're not part of your community. And then, of course, if they don't feel they're part of something, they feel less inclined to listen to anything else you have to say. So we're taking the approach is they're all part of our community. People make choices to either be here or shelter in the city for their own reasons. I'm actually aware of one situation where it's the family of healthcare workers. So the grandmother is up here with the grandchildren, and the other people in the family who are healthcare workers are, isolating in Toronto because they don't want to bring, whatever they might pick up at the hospital back to the children and the grandmother. So, how do you criticize that? And so, I think everybody makes their own decisions, and the only thing we're concerned about is how they behave when they're here.
Yeah, I get that. That's a very interesting perspective, because I know that over in Bruce County there are two communities which went into complete lockdown, and that has been an interesting dynamic, because the people want access to their cottages and they can't have them. Or in other municipalities, they said, no, we're not going to allow you to rehook up your water, simply because it gives us a problem, because we are at risk. So it's a very interesting conversation. But you put a motion on the floor of Grey County Council, did you not?
Yes, the same conversation was going on in Muskoka, and these things are toxic to a community. And the effects of these will last a long time after the pandemic has passed. I mean, a lot of our seasonal residents are true members of the community. They're up here not just in the summer, but in the winter to ski. They belong and contribute to many of the community organizations. They're big donors to them, and they also contribute to our local hospitals. And it's really, for a lot of them, it's a pre-retirement residence. So they really consider this as their home. So that's why I brought the motion. Is there was some discourse in the community, and I've heard about the things over in Bruce, but, I think by disengaging with these people, by being overly hostile, it's very counterproductive. And so I did bring a motion at Grey County, which I'm happy to say passed unanimously, for Grey County to issue a letter, saying let's stop the us versus them, and let's all work together to defeat this thing. And this is very similar to what the mayors in Muskoka did in response to some of the discourse there. They issued a letter, and very similar to that, to say, okay, let's just all act responsibly and we'll all be safe.
The issue I know over in Bruce was that there was a fair bit of irresponsible action, and that was part of the problem. The same was true in Simcoe County, that there were, I know in Simcoe, the medical officer of health was astounded that they had 30 cases of COVID and the people disappeared. They were not acting responsibly. So it becomes a balance as well, is that we like to think people act responsibly, but some don't. So does it become a question of both and not either or?
Well, I think, there will always be people that, act irresponsibly, but, that goes for permanent residents as well as seasonal. I mean, I know that there are permanent residents that have had visitors for the weekend. And to me, if you look at that, a permanent resident that has somebody come and stay in their house for the whole weekend versus a seasonal resident that comes up and maybe stays on their property, brings a lot of their own food, and maybe goes to the grocery store once and wears a mask. I mean, the risk is far greater of transmission when you have somebody live in your house for the weekend. And
yeah, certainly.
My point is, yeah, there are irresponsible people, but what I want to do is keep up the communication with everyone. And because once you lose that communication because you're being hostile towards someone, then they're not going to listen to what advice you're giving them on how to behave. They're just going to say, well, they don't want me here, I'm not part of it. But they're going to come anyway, and then they've tuned you out. So I always believe, keep the lines of communication open, make people feel like they're part of something, and then they'll be more likely to have a positive outcome.
Well, we could probably have an ongoing discussion about this one because I can say I've had a very different experience in Bruce County, but that's a conversation for another day. What else is happening at County Council? We have not heard a whole lot about the County Council and its activities. Because Warden McQueen, it's been probably several weeks since we've talked to Warden McQueen. What has been happening at County Council?
Well, County Council continues to do its work. Couple of things. The Swift wireless proposal is moving forward, albeit very slowly. I've expressed my frustration with that. Certainly, Swift, it was designed to deliver rural broadband, but they've had now they have 11 projects going on in Lambton and Norfolk and Haldimand counties, but none of those will come on stream till 2021. They were originally budgeted, some of those projects, to get going in 2018. It's now 2020. And when you look at where some of these projects are, they seem to be in rather wealthy shoreline communities. And when you look at the 11 projects, only 4 of them really are what you can consider to be truly rural farmland. So, I have some concerns on that. So we've discussed that a bit. The rest of the stuff is pretty routine. We did discuss last meeting the closure of Simcoe County Road, what was the former Simcoe County Road 91 in Clearview Township, and certainly that's of concern to particularly us in Grey Highlands and the Blue Mountains, because it will basically eliminate an east-west route into this area, and we know that Highway 26 is already crowded, so there's transportation issues that way. The county, and I think the medical officer of health should be commended, and the county staff in the long-term care homes for the excellent job they've done. We've only had 93 cases in all of Grey and Bruce. So compared to other areas, we've been very light on cases. And what's particularly impressive is how the seniors long-term care homes have dealt with the issue, in that you hear a lot about long-term care homes where one person gets sick and it spreads to the entire home. In our cases, all of the outbreaks in the old folks' homes have been contained to a minimum number of people, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's certainly very impressive that they've been able to do that when you see what's happened in other homes. And nobody has died, and I think there's been 1 hospitalization. So they're doing an excellent job.
Yes, I don't believe that the one long-term care home in your municipality had any cases at all. They seem to be all concentrated in Grey County, in the northern end of Grey County, in Sound, and further and over in Bruce County, and many of them were false positives. So
yes.
You had 1 case, and then oops, it was a false positive, which basically cleared everything out of the way. But yeah, I think you're quite right that we have a real debt of thanks we owe to the medical officer of health and his staff, and the people who are serving in long-term care situations, because they are working in a very difficult situation, but seem to be doing an excellent job.
Yes, that's true. I mean, it's amazing, really, because there are no visitors allowed, and they've certainly done that. But yet, when you look at other areas, somehow COVID gets in there. So it has to be practices and, the people that are working there that are bringing it in, because there's no visitors. So I think our staff are to be commended for the fact that they've kept it out by and large. And when it has managed to surface, they've been able to control it to so few people.
Yes, indeed, and that also goes for the county long-term care homes as well.
Yes,
they have done an excellent job. I know I talked with the head of the long-term care committee, mayor of Georgian Bluffs, about that, and he was quite pleased. This was a couple of weeks ago, so it's continuing, and that's a very, very good thing. We've only got a couple of minutes, but going forward, where will Town of Blue Mountains, where will things be going in the Town of Blue Mountains?
Well, as you mentioned, we're kind of unique in that we're a very big tourist area. And I'm particularly concerned when things start to open up that people won't be traveling to, Europe or on airplanes or on cruises. And so we will probably get an influx of visitors from the GTA. And so, we've been working very hard to develop protocols and procedures to be able to receive those people safely. Certainly, we don't have huge beaches, and the beaches that we have are somewhat smaller than they were a few years ago with the high water. So, how do you control the number of people on a beach? So we're looking at parking strategies, distancing circles on beaches. Also on the main street, we're already seeing, as the businesses open and restrict the number of people in the store, there's people waiting to get in or to pick up something. And so we're looking at removing the parking spaces and putting up barriers so we can have more spaces for people to distance. Certainly a big challenge is washroom facilities and hand washing related to that, minimizing the number of touch points. So we're developing all these procedures, and it's going to be a new reality where we're going to have to practice some kind of control on the number of people in various areas. And also, how we deal with minimizing touch points and putting out visual cues, because I think most people will socially distance, but when you're having a good time, it's easy to forget. So it's signage and information and all that. So that's why I mentioned earlier that we're probably going to need more staff and not less.
Well, it's good to hear that you're planning for next steps. And believe it or not, we're just out of time. So I wanted to thank you, Mayor Soever, for being a part of Politically Speaking. And I hope that you will stay healthy, continue to stay healthy, and that the Town of Blue Mountains will have an interesting summer. We look forward to talking to you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and my best wishes to everybody, and please stay safe.
Thank you, friends. I'm David Shearman. My guest has been Mayor Alar Soever of the Town of Blue Mountains. This is Politically Speaking. We'll talk again.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Shaggy and Scooby were taken?
Yeah. This blue light came down from the sky and beamed them up.